one is network security. We have seen the type of service attack. So there are two types of service attack possible. One is passive attack, another one is active attack. The sender is giving information to the receiver. So in the middle, the hacker just get the information and pass it to the receiver is called passive attack. But if the same hacker do some modification in the information and retransmit to the receiver is called active attack. There are certain mechanism available, there are certain methodology available by which we are able to protect the information as well as protect the network security and the information security for an organization. In such a case, it is called service mechanism. So we come across two types of network model. One is network security model. Another one is network access security model. In both the model, we are seeing that the information given by the sender should reach the receiver in the protected form, secured form, as well as validity of the information must be there. That means your information should be protected. Your information must be reliable. So for that, we have two type of model. One is network security model. The second one is network access security model. In the last class, I was telling about the four types of method: symmetric cipher model, substitution technique, transposition technique, and the fourth one is steganography. So these are the four classical encryption technique. We call it as traditional techniques available in order to protect the information, in order to do the encryption method of encryption at the sender side. These are the four traditional types are available. Now we have to see the remaining topics, finite field and the number theory. So we are going to see certain topics under number theory and finite field, which is mostly correlated with the field of mathematics. Like the topics group, ring, field, modular arithmetic. Modular arithmetic means you are going to use addition, subtraction, multiplication, and division on modular variable. So there are certain algorithm is available. The Chinese remainder algorithm, discrete algorithm, Euclid algorithm, then polynomial arithmetic, prime number, what is a prime number and how they are related to other number. Then another two types of theorem, Fermat theorem and Euler's theorem. Then we have a test called primality test. So this primality test is to test whether a number is prime or not. So these are the various topics connected with the number theory and the finite field, which we are going to see in this video lecture. These are active and passive attack, security services, security mechanism, model for network security. This is the first model for network security, which comprises sender, there is an encryptor, information channel, decryptor, and the receiver. So the key is common to both the sender and the receiver. Encryption means converting plain text to ciphertext. Decryption means converting ciphertext to plain text. Cipher means algorithm. So what is the algorithm used for encryption is called cipher. Key means secret information known only to the sender and the receiver, not to any other person. The another model is called network access security model. So here we are having the operand. Operand means the hacker or cracker. Sometimes even software also, and the virus software will be there. But in our system, we have to protect the data. Not only data, we have to protect the resources also. We have to protect the software. We have to protect the hardware. In terms of hardware, processor, memory, I/O. In terms of software, your operating system or any other application software will be available. So for that, we go for a gatekeeper function. So these are the components present in the network access security model. Classical encryption technique we have seen in the last class. So cryptography means a study of secret writing. You are writing something, you are writing a message in a secret form, known only to the sender and the receiver, not to any other person connected with the network. And these two are the authorized person to tamper the information, to know the reliability of the information, content of the information. We have seen the basic terminology, meaning of cryptography, plain text, ciphertext, cipher, and the key. Encipher, decipher. Crypto analysis means code breaking. The hacker in the middle of the network used to tap the information. That process is called crypto analysis or code breaking. Cryptology means both cryptography, crypto analysis put together is called cryptology. Cryptology is nothing but a science or an art. So I was telling the meaning of encryption and decryption. Encryption means converting original information to secured information. Decryption means converting secured information to original information, or in other words, I can say converting plain text to ciphertext. Converting ciphertext to plain text is called encryption and decryption, respectively. So there are 5 important models connected with the conventional encryption model. This is called symmetric cipher model. We are having plain text, encryption algorithm, channel, decryption algorithm, and again plain text. Key is commonly shared between the sender and the receiver. Crypto system model, the same thing in an expanded way. When we come across the substitution technique, so under substitution technique, we are having various subdivisions are available. Caesar cipher, mono-alphabetic cipher, Playfair cipher, Hill cipher, polyalphabetic cipher, and one-time pad. So substitution technique means for each character in the plain text information, maybe a single character or maybe a double character. It may be multiple character or a single character. I am going to substitute some other letter to frame the ciphertext information so that it can be securely transmitted to the receiver side. So many ciphers are available. Cipher means algorithm. One is called Caesar cipher. Mono-alphabetic cipher. If you make a single letter substitution, it is called mono-alphabetic cipher. In the case of Caesar cipher, I can use either 3 times shifting from the position of the letter. So it is called Caesar cipher. Then we come across Playfair cipher, Hill cipher, and polyalphabetic cipher. So in the case of the polyalphabetic cipher, what we do means we take a combination of plain text, we substitute a combination of ciphertext. So that conversion process, that encryption process is called polyalphabetic cipher, and there is one more method called one-time pad. So these are the various subdivisions available under substitution technique, or we call it as various algorithms available under substitution technique in order to do the encryption at the sender side. Then transposition technique. I was telling the rail fence technique. So there was a table, rows and columns. The message will be available in terms of rows. You have to form a key. Once the key is framed, you take column-wise information and frame the ciphertext here. That is called transposition technique or rail fence technique. Rail fence technique and block transposition technique are the 2 subdivisions under transposition technique. When you multiply them, when you combinedly put together both the substitution and the transposition cipher, it is called product technique. And we have seen the meaning of steganography also. Steganography means a message will be given. A complete paragraph will be given. This paragraphic information will be given to the receiver. The key will be take only the first letter of each and every word. See the first letter of each and every word. N-E, new. T-I, new T is upset because he thinks he is the president. So that is the actual message which can be coined from the first letter of each and every word given in the paragraph. Such a method is called steganography. So in the case of steganography, we are not doing any transformation at all. Something is given, some paragraphic or raw information is given. You have to coin the original information using either the first letter or maybe the second letter, or any other methodology may be given in the case of steganography as a key formation. Such a method is called steganography. So far we have seen the security attack, security threat or attack, security services, security mechanism, 2 types of network model, 4 types of classical encryption technique. The first technique is called substitution technique. First one is symmetric cipher model. Second one, substitution technique. Third one, transposition technique. Fourth one, steganography. So these are the topics we have seen in the first half of unit number 1. Let us go to the number theory and finite field, the remaining 50% under unit 1. So group, what's the meaning of a group? A group is nothing but a set of element or a number. Suppose you have a set of number or element, it is called a group. And in the group, we have to do some arithmetical operation, maybe addition, subtraction, multiplication or division, any sort of arithmetical operation you can go for. The result is available. The result is also available within the group. So group means a set of element or number along with the result is called a group. Now, what are the properties of the group? The group obeys associative law, identity law, inverse law, commutative law. If the group obeys all the four laws, it is said to be abelian group. It is said to be abelian group. So what do you mean by associative law? Associative law, I need three variables should be there. A, B, C. Either you can form A plus B plus C equal to A plus B plus C, or A dot B within the bracket into C equal to A dot B, B dot C within the bracket. So when you are going for addition or multiplication operation, if you have a three variable, if you remove the bracket and displace with respect to other two variable, if they are found to be equal, it is called associative law. Identity law, E dot A equal to A dot D, and that is equal to A. E means actually 1. 1 dot A equal to A dot 1 equal to A. So such a law is called identity law. Inverse law, A dot A inverse must be equal to E. E means value 1. Commutative law, you are just replacing the position of the variable A dot B equal to B dot A. Commutative law. So if a group obeys all these laws, it is said to be abelian group. Remember, a group is not only a set of element or a number, but the result also available within the group if any arithmetical operation is performed. What is meant by cyclic group? So a cyclic group means it defines exponentiation as a repeated application of the operator. For example, you take it as A positive 3, A dot A. So the identity will be E equal to A dot 0. A group is cyclic if every element is a power of some fixed element. So look at the example 1, 2, 4, 8. This one with the multiple multiplication. We call it as a cyclic group. How do you call it as a cyclic group? Each and every element in the group is a power of one element, which is nothing but 2. What is 1? 2 power 0. What is 2? 2 power 1. What is 4? 2 power square. What is 8? 2 power 3. So that each and every element in the group is expressed as a power of one element. That is called cyclic group. So here the power is nothing but 2. It is called as a generator. A group is cyclic if every element is a power of some fixed element. So here the fixed element is 2. So the group is said to be cyclic because each and every element is a power of 2. First case 2 power 0, 2 power 1, 2 square and 2 power 4. Now we know the meaning of group and a cyclic group. Let us go to the meaning of ring. Ring means it is also a set of number, but two operations will be there. See, group means only one operation will be performed. Ring means two operations can be performed, a set of number, both addition and multiplication. It can form an abelian group with the addition operation. If the group obeys a commutative law, then the group is said to be abelian group. So it is forming an abelian group with the addition operation, and with the case of the multiplication, it obeys the law, distributive law and the associative law. I was telling meaning of associative law. Either you go for addition or multiplication, three variables will be there, displacing the variable within bracket and outside the bracket. But distributive law means you have two operator. One is multiplication operator, another one is addition operator. So A dot B plus C within bracket equal to A dot B plus A dot C. So if your group, this group should obey both addition operation as well as associative and distributive law. In such a case, it is said to be commutative ring. We call it as a commutative group when it obeys the commutative law and other law. But if the ring obeys the commutative law as well as associative and distributive, it is said to be commutative ring. Then we come across a definition called field. So in this field is also a set of number, but here also two operations will be there. One is abelian group for addition, another one is abelian group for multiplication. Third one, it must be a ring. That means we are coming across three parameters in a sequential manner. First one is group, the next one is the ring. The above, I am telling in the form of hierarchy from the bottom to top hierarchy. First one is group, second one is ring, Above the ring, we are having field. So a set of number having two operation, satisfying two operation, abelian group for addition. That means it should obey commutative law with respect to addition. Abelian group for multiplication, it must obey commutative law with respect to multiplication operation. And you can see the hierarchy. Group is a subset of ring. Ring is a subset of field. I can show the diagram. When I will look at the diagram, hierarchy of group, ring, and the field. You can see initially group. The second one is abelian group. The third one is, see, when abelian group means commutative law will be satisfied. Commutative law of addition. Additive inverse, identity, associative law, closure and addition. So it should satisfy certain laws. Then only it is called a group. A group is a set of numbers satisfying these four laws, four laws, A1, A2, A3, and A4. And what is abelian group? It should satisfy A1 to A5. In addition, commutative law with respect to addition operation must be satisfied. So what is a ring? Ring means in addition to these addition operation laws, commutative of addition, closure under multiplication, associative law for multiplication, as well as distributive law. So A1 to M3 is satisfied means it is called ring. What is commutative ring? If it satisfies the commutative law with respect to multiplication, it is called commutative ring. Whereas in the group, if it satisfies commutative law with respect to addition, it is called abelian group. So you try to know the difference between abelian group and the commutative ring. The last one is integral domain. Integral domain means if there is no zero divisor. That means if a divisor is available ranging from 1 to n, then it is said to be integral domain. Integral domain will include no zero divisor. That means divisors are available other than zero is called integral domain. Finally, we have a parameter called field. Field means multiplicative inverse is also allowed. From A1 to M7, if these laws are satisfied, it is said to be field. So generally, three parameters are there. One is group, second one is ring, third one is field. The hierarchy is shown here. Modular arithmetic. You know the meaning of a modulo operator. A mod n means if A is divided by n, what is the remainder available? That will be given as A mod n. So remainder equal to A mod n. If A divided by n, then you will get quotient and remainder. That remainder value equal to A mod n. We are using a term called congruence. So congruence for A equal to B mod n. When divided by n, both A and B have the same remainder. See, there are two variables here, A and B. Two numbers are there. I am dividing by n. When I divide by n, I get the same remainder, same value. Or in other words, I can put A equal to B mod n or B equal to A mod n. In that case, I can say A and B are congruent to each other. We'll take an example. So 34 mod 11. 34 means 34 divided by 11, quotient is 3, remainder is 1. So remainder equal to 1. Now 100 divided by 11. Quotient is 9, 99, remainder is 1. So we are having two number 134. When divided by 11, we are getting the same remainder. In this case, we can say that 134 are congruent to each other. So the term congruent is important. Or in other words, we can call B is called the residue of A mod n. So what is A mod n? We will get B. So we call B is nothing but the residue of A mod n. Since with the integer we always write A equal to Qn plus Nb, where B value lies between 0 to n minus 1. So Q is also another integer value. B value lies between 0 to n minus 1. The process is called modulo reduction. You can see the numbers below. Minus 12 mod 7. It is getting reduced to remainder minus 5 mod 7. Then we get 2 mod 7 and then 9 mod 7. So it keeps on getting reduction from 12 to 9. So this process is called modulo reduction. When we come across any reduction technique using modulo operator, the process is said to be modulo reduction. So in this slide, you have to know only three things. What do you mean by modulo operator? What is meant by congruence? And what is meant by residue of the given operation, modular arithmetic. Then divisor. B is say a non-zero number B. Non-zero number mean B will be always greater than or equal to 1. Divides A. M for M. M is nothing but a positive integer. A equal to MB. That means A divided by B equal to M. In such a case, no remainder will be available. So we can say B is a divisor of A. Example. For example, 1, 2, 3, 4, 6, 8, 12 divided by 24 means we'll get some remainder. So we call it as the divisor of this number is nothing but 24. Because the divisor of this number is 24 means what? You will not get any, you will get remainder 0. You will not get any remainder value at all. So when we call it as a divisor, A divided by B equal to 0. Sorry, A divided by B equal to some quotient value will be there, remainder will be always 0. And remainder equal to 0 only we can say B is nothing but a divisor of A. One example is given. So these are the numbers which can be divided by 24. For example, 2 by 24, 1 by 12, 3 by 24, 1 by 8, 4 by 24, 1 by 64. Remainder will become 0. When remainder equal to 0, we can say one parameter as divisor of the given number. Modular arithmetic operation. So modular arithmetic operation is clock arithmetic. It uses a finite number of value. Modular arithmetic is when to do addition and multiplication, and the modulo reduce answer. Can do reduction at any point. You can see the formula given here. Modulo arithmetic operation. A plus B mod n. See, A plus B within bracket mod n. This is equivalent to A mod n plus B mod n, then mod n, the total within bracket mod n. So this process is called modulo arithmetic operation. Why it is called modulo arithmetic operation? I am applying only addition operation here. Since I am applying addition operation, it is called modular arithmetic operation. So here also is given some value A plus B. If A plus B equal to A plus C mod n, some peculiarities are given. Then B equal to C mod n. Suppose I'm using two number, two expression A plus B and A plus C mod n. If they are equal, then you can omit the number A, use only the number B and C. B equal to C mod n. Then A dot B equal to A dot C mod n. Then B equal to C mod n only if A is relative prime to n. So what is A relatively prime to n means if I take two number A comma n, if I am unable to find the GCD, greatest common divisor, except 1, then we can say A is relatively prime to n. We will see that two numbers are there, A and n. How do we say A comma n are relatively prime to each other? If you find out GCD for the two number A comma n, if the GCD value is 1, then we can say A and n are relatively prime to each other. So in that case, this multiplicative expression also satisfies this equation. So these are the two peculiarities connected with the modular arithmetic. We are discussing about the modular arithmetic operation, either using the plus operator or multiplicative operator. One example for modulo 8 addition is given in terms of a table. See, row wise as well as column wise start from 0, then ends with 7. So why we call modulo 8 addition means modulo 8 means 0 to 7. This information would have come across under digital system design. Mod 8 counter, we call it as a mod 8 counter means what? It counts from 0 to 7. So here we are doing only addition. So 0 to 7. Row wise or column wise. See the first one. Row wise, column wise 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Row wise also 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 7. The cycle repeats. So this table indicates an example for modulo 8 addition. Greatest common divisor, GCD. So I did not explain about GCD. You are well aware of GCD. Let us see an example, GCD of 60, 24. So when you find out the greatest common divisor, you will get the value 12. So 12 is nothing but common to both 60 and 24, and the greatest common divisor for the given two number. Sometimes you may come across two number 8, 15. See, 8 is separately divisible, 15 is separately divisible. But when you see the common divisor for 8 and 15, you cannot come across any number, you cannot arrive at any answer except for 1. So GCD of any two number equal to 1 means, then we can say 8 and 15 are relatively prime to each other. We're selling the meaning of relatively prime here in the modular arithmetic. So we can say that any two number, if you find out the GCD value equal to 1, then we can say those two numbers are relatively prime to each other. Before going to the Euclidean theorem, so far what we have seen is definition for group, definition for ring, definition for field, divisor, greatest common divisor, modular arithmetical operation involving plus operator, modular arithmetic operation involving multiplication operator. Let us go to an algorithm called Euclidean algorithm. It is an efficient way to find the GCD A comma B. Suppose you come across a very big number, 3-digit number or 4-digit number. It is very difficult to find the GCD. So we go for an algorithm called Euclidean algorithm to find the GCD of any two number in an efficient way. So this algorithm uses the equation GCD A comma B equal to GCD B comma A mod B. GCD B comma A mod B, the second number comma the first number mod versus B. Now let us see the algorithm how to compute GCD of A comma B is given below. The given number is A and B. A given to capital letter A, small letter B to B. If B equal to 0, return A equal to GCD A comma B. Suppose if the second number equal to 0, for example, B value equal to 0, then GCD A comma B will be assigned to A value. Now R, reminder, A mod B. I am finding the, I am dividing A by B, assigning the remainder to R. So assigning the remainder to R, B value given to A. The second number is given to the first variable. Remainder is given to the B. Now go to 2. Go to 2 and find out the value of GCD. Let us take an example. In the example only you'll be able to understand. Example GCD 1970, 1970, 1066, two numbers are there. This is A, this one is B. Now we are applying the formula. What is the formula? 1970 equal to 1 into 1066 plus 904. This one, GCD of B comma A mod B. GCD of 1066 comma 904. The second case. See the first case, the number B equal to 1970. This is 1970 equal to 1 into 1066 plus 904. I think 904 is the remainder. The remainder we come across 904. So the second number as well as the remainder will come into picture, GCD of 904. Second expression, this second number will come here 1 into 904. That means we have to find out the remainder of these two. You will get 162. So likewise it goes. When it reaches 0, GCD of 2 comma 0, you will get the answer. Your answer is 4. Sorry, great GCD of 2 comma 0 means your answer is 2. So likewise, we are finding the GCD expression for each and every given number. So the given number is 1970, 1066. The quotient is 1. So 1 into 1066 plus 904 equal to 1970. So 1970, I am expressing in terms of an expression. How do you express 1 into 1066 plus 904? This is the second number. This one is the first number. This is quotient and this one is remainder. After doing this, you are finding the GCD for 1066, 904. That becomes the second expression. So likewise, we keep on reducing the A and B. Finally, we come across a number 2, 0. If any one of the number becomes 0, automatically GCD value can be easily find out. So for the given problem, the GCD value equal to 2. That is what this algorithm says. If B equal to 0, return A equal to GCD of A, B. So likewise, they are finding the remainder that is assigned to B. The second number is assigned to the first number. Go to 2 until B becomes 0. They will keep on rotating. If B becomes 0, if B not equal to 0, this will be followed. If B equal to 0, what will happen? The other number will become the GCD. So this algorithm is called Euclidean algorithm to find the GCD of any two number in an efficient way. Exponentiation. How to find out the exponentiation in a modular arithmetic? We can use a square and a multiply algorithm. So what do you mean by square and multiply algorithm? You can see it here. 7 power 5 equal to 7 power 4 into 7 power 1. Then 4 minus 1 power equal to 3.7. Then we are adding these two numbers, it will become 10 mod 11. So it is a fast, efficient algorithm for exponentiation. So there is an algorithm called modular exponentiation. Using this algorithm, we can do both the square and the multiply operation. Using the formula O log 2n multiple for the number n, given. So n is nothing but the integer number given. So far we have seen about the definition for ring, definition for group, definition for field, modular arithmetical operation with respect to addition, with respect to multiplication, divisor, GCD, Euclidean theorem, and modular exponentiation using square and multiply operation. So these are the things connected with the number theory. Finite field. So what is the definition for field? A field is a non-empty set of elements. That means a field means a group of elements, a set of elements. Set of at least one element will be there. That is why it is called non-empty set of F element with the two operation, addition operation and multiplication operation, satisfying the following axioms. Axiom means certain rules are available. If it satisfies, means it is said to be a finite field. A finite field is a non-empty field. It should satisfy two operations. One is addition, another one is multiplication. Moreover, it should satisfy the following rules or axiom. You can see the following rule, commutative law. A plus B equal to B plus A. A dot B equal to B dot A. Associative law, three variable will come into picture. Whenever you come across associative law and distributive law, you will come across three variable. So in the case of associative law, common operator addition will be followed. Either you go for plus or minus. Two variable will come within the bracket, one variable outside the bracket. Even if you display the position of the variable, it must be equal. That is called associative law. Distributive law means two operator will be there. In the case of commutative and associative law, one operator will be connected. Either will be using bracket or without bracket. But in the case of distributive law, you will come across two operator. One is plus, another one is multiplication. You will also come across parenthesis. So A dot B plus C equal to A dot B plus A dot C. Then identity law. A plus 0 equal to A dot 1 equal to A for all values of A. Then additive inverse. A plus A inverse equal to 0. Actually, this one is A inverse. A plus A inverse equal to 0. Sorry, A plus minus A equal to 0. Additive inverse for all values of A. as well as multiplicative inverse. A dot A inverse must be equal to 1. A plus minus A equal to 0. A dot A inverse equal to 1. So these axiom should be followed, should be satisfied by the field. Then only it is called a finite field. Then they have given two expression here. Minus 1 into A equal to minus A. For that, they have given the proof. And similarly, A dot B equal to 0 implies either A equal to 0 or B equal to 0. For that, proof is available. So minus 1 into A. So they are given the proof minus 1 dot A plus A equal to minus 1 into A plus 1 dot A. So we are taking A common, minus 1 plus 1 equal to 0 dot A equal to 0. Thus minus 1 into A equal to minus A. And similarly, if A not equal to 0, that means A is a positive number, B equal to 1 into B. In the place of 1, we are putting A inverse into A into B. So A inverse AB equal to A inverse into 0. So A inverse equal to 0 means 0. So we are having two axiom here. Minus 1 into A equal to minus A dot B equal to 0. To satisfy that, the proof is given below. Definition for finite field, commutative ring, integer ring is given in this slide. A field containing only finite number of elements. Finitely many number of elements is called a finite field, and it should satisfy all the axiom. So what are the axioms? 1 to 8, it must be satisfied. Then only it is called finite field. And moreover, the set is also called commutative ring. If it satisfied 1 to 8 rules given in the previous slide, it is said to be commutative ring. And the set of all integer forms a ring under normal addition and multiplication. So if the set of all integer satisfies the normal addition and multiplication, then the ring is said to be the integer ring. So many definitions are given for the finite field. So finite field, why we go for finite field? Applications of finite field. Increasing importance in the field of cryptography. AES, Advanced Encryption Standard, there is one algorithm. Public key algorithm, elliptical curve, IDEA. These are the 4 algorithms currently used in practice. So this finite field we are going to employ in preparing the encryption algorithm or decryption algorithm. Concern operation on the number and the type of operations on the number. Start with the concept of group, ring, field, and from the abstract algebra. So these group, ring, and field are connected with the abstract algebra. So we are going to use the finite field with respect to these 3 parameters. And these are finding importance in the field of cryptography, especially to encryption and decryption algorithm. So public key means we are having both encryption and decryption. A is connected with the encryption algorithm. So these are the 4 practical algorithms used in the network for the secured information of message between the sender and the receiver. Now let us see the some more information regarding the prime number. The prime number is an important factor connected with the number theory. So how do you define a prime number? The prime number should be always greater than 1. Any integer greater than 1 is a prime number if and only if it is divisible by 1 and p. How do you say a number? For example, you take a number p. 3 conditions are available. So 2 conditions are available. First of all, your number should be greater than 1. Second one, that number can be divided by the same number or by 1. Then only it is called a prime number. You can see the number of prime numbers below 2000 is given in the table. Starting from 2, 3, 5, 7, 11, 13, 17, 19. So likewise, so many numbers are given. 23. So these are the numbers available, prime numbers available below 2007. The prime number is going to be employed in the various algorithm, and the various numerical algorithm we are going to employ in the field of cryptography. That is why we are coming across number theory and the finite field. So integer factorization, integer a greater than 1. P is nothing but a prime number. Here two variables are given in the expression. A is an integer always greater than 1. P is a prime number. A equal to P1 into P1 power A1, P2 power A2, P3 power A3, up to P power P suffix T to A power T, where P1, P2, Pt are the prime number. AI is a positive integer, I value 1 to T. For example, 91, the number is given. How do you express in terms of prime number? 7 and 13. Then 11,101, this is not a binary format, it is a decimal format only. So 11,101, 11,101 equal to 7 into 11 square into 13. So we are representing one integer number in terms of prime number, as well as the power of prime number. So this method is called integer factorization. A method of integer factorization is to express any integer as a product of prime number or as a power of prime number. So 11,101 is expressed in terms of 7 into 11 square into 13. 11 square is 141. So 141 into 13 into 7, you will get 11,101. So another integer factorization is also given. A equal to subset P of A power P. Again, remember A is an integer, P is a prime number. Both A and P always greater than 0. You can see 3,600 can be expressed in terms of 2 power 4, 3 square, 5 square, 7 power 0, 11 power 0. 7 power 0 equal to 1, 11 power 0 equal to 1. Likewise, we can keep on put in terms of prime number, starting from 2. So here, A1 equal to 4, A2 equal to 2, A3 equal to 2, A4 equal to 0, A5 equal to 0. I'm telling the power of each prime number I'm telling in terms of A1, A2. Here, A1, A2. So here A1 equal to 0, A2 equal to 2, A3 equal to 0. Expressing integer in terms of prime number. Method is called integer factorization. Another integer factorization is also given here. 12, 2 square into 3 power 1. So A2 equal to 1, A3 equal to 1. The first case is A2, the second number is A3. Now multiplication of two number is adding the two corresponding exponent. So there are two number, I am taken two number. One is 12, another one is 18, 216. So 12 equal to 2 square into 3 power 1. 4 into 3, 12. 18 equal to 2 power 1 into 3 square. 9 into 2, 18. So I'm adding the corresponding exponent. 2 power 3 into 3 power 3. So 2 power 3 is nothing but 8. 3 power 3 is 27. So 27 into 8 equal to 216. So in the case of multiplication also, we are applying the concept of prime number. Even division also, A by B, A power P less than or equal to B power P. So here also we are able to find out the number 12, number 36, A2 value equal to 2, B2 value equal to 2, A3 value equal to 1, B3 value equal to 2. So divisibility. So addition, multiplication, division using the concept of prime number. Even GCD also. K equal to GCD of A comma P equal A comma B equal to K power P equal to minimum of A power P comma B power P for all values of P. So for example, GCD of 18 comma 300. 300, this is the expression. 18, this is the expression. I'm taking the minimum value. What is the minimum value here? The minimum value in the above expression is 3 power 1. Below expression is 2 power 1. So your GCD is 2 power 1 into 3 power 1 into 5 power 0. So 5 power 5, why you are putting 5 power 0 means already the number 5 is available with 300. So I'm adding the number 5. I cannot type 7 power 0 in both the cases. Since 5 is here, to make it uniformity, I make it as 5 power 0. So GCD of two number, here also prime number plays an important role. So using prime number, we are able to do all sort of arithmetical operation, addition, multiplication, division, as well as we are able to find the GCD of two given number using the concept of prime number. Then we come across two theorem. One is called Fermat theorem, another one is Euler theorem. So you remember two variables are there. A is a positive integer, B is a prime number. A is a positive integer not divisible by B. That relation also should be there. So in that case, the Fermat theorem says A power P minus 1 is equivalent to 1 mod P. So any difficulty, clarification up to this point? Any doubt or clarification up to this point? We are discussing number theory and finite. It's very easy, easy to understand.
Yes, sir.
Because it's mostly connected with the mathematics only. So let me go to the Fermat theorem. The Fermat theorem is given in the form of an expression. A power P minus 1 is equivalent to 1 mod P. What is P? Prime number. What is A? Integer value. So they are forming a relation between A and P in terms of modulo operator. Such a theorem is called Fermat theorem. The proof of Fermat theorem is given in terms of 3 steps. So first of all, you have to follow the 3 steps. Then only will get the proof. I will show the step. First of all, we have to show that 1 comma 2 comma to the to P minus 1 equal to A mod P, 2A mod P, P minus 1 A mod P. So we have to show that. Second one, P minus 1 equal to P minus 1 factorial equal to P minus 1 factorial into A power P minus 1 mod P. And third one, we have to show that P minus 1 factorial must be relatively prime to P. I was telling you two numbers are said to be relatively prime to each other if they have a GCD value 1. Other than 1, no other divisor will be available. In such a case, we can set to be relatively prime to each other. So these are the 3 steps outlined to show the proof of Fermat theorem. So that is given one by one here. Proof of Fermat theorem in 3 steps, it is given here very clearly. We go to the alternative form of Fermat theorem. So previously we have seen Fermat theorem equal to A power P minus 1 equal to 1 mod P. So I can write A power P equal to A mod P, where P is a prime number, A is any positive integer. So again the proof is also given, but A and P should be relatively prime to each other. That condition should be satisfied. So another alternative form for Fermat theorem. An example is given for the alternative form here. A power P equivalent to A mod P. If you take a number and find out the model value, it is equal to A power P. P is a prime number, A is a positive integer. For example, 3 power 5. Let us take P equal to 5, A equal to 3. So 3 power 5 equal to 243. That is equivalent to 3 mod 5. That is equivalent to 3 mod 5. Similarly, P equal to 5, A power 10. And this is equivalent to 10 mod 5. 10 mod 5 means you will get remainder 0. 0 mod 5 it will come. So it is a formula. We are writing the equivalent expression. We are writing the equivalent expression between the power of a number as well as the using the modulo operator. Now we come across one more function called torsion function. Torsion function pi of n. For example, torsion of pi of 37 equal to 36. Pi of n equal to n minus 1. Because n equal to 37, n minus 1 equal to 36. So 36 is a prime number. Since 36 is a prime number, all the positive number 1 to 36 are relatively prime to 37. Because we are having the n value equal to prime number. So 0 to n minus 1 will be relatively prime to the prime number 37. So how to compute the function pi of n? So we are having three formula. In general, pi of n equal to n subset of 1 minus 1 by p. Second one, if for a prime number n, pi of n equal to n minus 1. If n is a prime number, then pi of n equal to n minus 1. For example, 37 is a prime number. So pi of 37 equal to 36. The third step, if n equal to pq, p and q are the prime number, where p not equal to q. In such a case, pi of n equal to p minus 1 into q minus 1. So we come across three cases to compute the value of pi of 1. I will show you an example. Let us see the proof for pi of n equal to p minus 1 into q minus 1. Pi of n equal to number of positive integer less than pq but relatively prime to pq. That means pi of n equal to number of positive integer which is less than the product of p and q. Suppose in the case of 37, we have calculated the positive integer 1 to 36. Similarly here, we are using two number p and q. So the number of positive integer less than pq but must be relatively prime to pq. It can be calculated by subtracting pq minus 1 number of positive integer that are not relatively prime to pq. So for that we go for two expression. One expression is p, 2p, 3p, 4p, q minus 1p. The second expression is q, 2q, p minus 1q. When I combine them, there is no same element that p plus q minus 2 elements are available in both the set. Now I am going to subtract p plus q minus 2 from pq minus 1. That is the formula. So what is the formula? We have to subtract from pq minus 1 the number of positive integer which are not relatively prime to pq. So that is p plus q minus 2. So in step number 2, I am subtracting p plus q minus 2 from pq minus 1. I will get p minus 1 into q minus 1. That is given in the second expression. The third expression, pi of n equal to p minus 1 into q minus 1. So one example is given here. Let us see one example. I want to find the torsion function of 21. That is n equal to 21. Pi of n equal to pi of 21. I am writing in terms of prime number. Two prime number. Pi of 3 into pi of 7. Because 7 into 3, 21. Now pi of, this is p and q. P minus 1, it is p minus 1 into q minus 1. This is a formula we have seen here. Pi of n equal to p minus 1 into q minus 1. In this case, p equal to 3, q equal to 7. So 3 minus 1 into 7 minus 1, 2 into 6 is 12. So 12 is the torsion function for 21. But 21 is nothing but, see the number of pi of 21, n minus 1 number of integers are available. What is n minus 1? N equal to 21. N minus 1 means 1 to 20 numbers are available. In this case, pi of 3. Pi of 3 means in terms of 3, what are the numbers available? 3, 6, 9, 12, 15, 18. Multiples of 3. Multiples of 7, 7, 14. So pi of 3, these numbers are available. pi of 7, multiples of 7 available. Remaining numbers are nothing but the 12 integers connected with the torsion function pi of 21. Now Euler's theorem. So far we have seen Fermat theorem and the torsion function. Under finite field, definition for finite field, the properties of the finite field, commutative ring as well as integer ring. Then we come across the Fermat theorem, alternative form of Fermat theorem, proof for Fermat theorem, then torsion function, how to calculate the torsion function for a given number n. Then we are coming across Euler theorem. See this Fermat theorem, Euler theorem, torsion function, all we are going to employ in the field of cryptography as far as encryption as well as disk decryption algorithms are concerned. So for every a and n which are relatively prime to each other, a power pi of n, a is an integer, n is a prime number. So previously we were using a and b, now we are using a and n. A pi of n equal to 1 mod n. So this example given here, a equal to 3, n equal to 10. So pi of 10 equal to 4. We have to compute it using that expression, pi of 10. So 3 power 4 equal to 81. 81 equal to 81 is equivalent to 1 mod 10. 1 mod 10. So when you do the modulo operator, you will get remainder 1. So it will become 1 mod 10. So a equal to 2. Another example is also given. Pi of 11 equal to 10. 2 power 10 equal to 1024. And this is equal to 1 mod. This is equivalent to 1 mod 11. Why 11? N equal to 11. Why 1? It is given in the formula. So the Euler's theorem says that any integer and prime number can be related by the torsion function as well as by the modulo operator given by a of pi of n equal to 1 mod n. Example is given there. But when you see the expression for Euler theorem as well as Fermat theorem, they are differing only slightly. They are using the torsion function as well as the modulo operator. The things you keep it in mind. The proof is given here. Proof of Euler theorem. Alternative form of Euler theorem is also given. A of a to the power pi of n plus 1 equal to a mod n. We have seen a power pi of n equal to 1 mod n. Now adding 1 pi of n. So this is equivalent to a mod n. This one is the alternative form for Euler theorem. This Euler theorem and the Fermat theorem we are using in an algorithm called RSA algorithm. This RSA algorithm is used for encrypting the message at the sender side. That means converting plain text information to ciphertext information. We go for an algorithm called RSA algorithm. We have seen the prime number, properties of the prime number. These are the various prime numbers below 2000. This slide I have already shown you. Prime factorization we have seen. Prime number factorization. Some of the slides are repeating. We come across a theorem called Fermat-Little theorem. A p is a prime number, a is a positive integer. A is a positive integer. Then a power n minus 1 equal to 1 mod p. We have already seen the Fermat theorem. A power n minus 1 equal to 1 mod p is the expression for the Fermat theorem. When we come across a topic called primality testing. So why this testing is required? Suppose large prime numbers are available. How to find out the large prime number? We have to go for trial and error division method. To avoid that, we go for a method called primality testing. Divide all the numbers and turn less than the square root of the number. If you want to find the prime number for the given set of number, you divide by all the number except the square root, less than the square root of the number. But this works only for the smaller number. I am telling about the trial and error division method. But when you use the primality test based upon the properties of the prime number, all prime numbers should satisfy the property. We come across a number called composite number called pseudo prime. They should satisfy satisfy the property. There is one more theorem called Chinese remainder algorithm. The Chinese remainder algorithm is given by the expression congruence of the given number x equal to summation I 1 to k a power I, a suffix I, c suffix I mod m. So what is a? A is nothing but a set of integer. What is m? A set of prime number available. You can see the m equal to m1 into m2 into m power k. K number of elements available. M product of all the prime number available. A set of integer value available. What is C? Mi within bracket mi power mi inverse mod mi. So we have to calculate the value of mi for each and every element. Substitute in this expression. Calculate Ci, and then you substitute here. We'll get an expression for Chinese remainder algorithm. It is abbreviated as CRT. So the Chinese remainder algorithm gives a number of congruent numbers for the given set of prime number. The proof is given here. The proof and the example is given here. I will share the PPT with you. We come across an algorithm called, finally we come across an algorithm called discrete algorithm. Let me complete the discrete algorithm. So what do you mean by discrete algorithm? This algorithm also we have seen a power n is equivalent to 1 mod p. You take a prime number p. Let a comma b be the non-zero integer value a comma b. The problem of fixing x equal to a power x equal to b mod p is called discrete logarithm problem. It is called discrete logarithm problem. It is given by a power n is equivalent to 1 mod p, but we have to calculate a power x equal to b mod p, where a and b are nothing but the integer value. A is the prime number. Sorry, p is the prime number. A and b are the integer value. So we have to find out a power x equal to b mod p. In such a case, it is called discrete logarithm of the given prime number. So where they are used in RSA algorithm. The difficulty of factoring a larger integer yields good crypto system. So this discrete logarithm, they find application in RSA in order to find out a larger integer with respect to the crypto system available. Suppose that is what the expression is given here. P is a prime number, a and b are the two integer number. We have to solve a power x equivalent to b mod p. A is suggested to be a primitive root mod p. So this is the expression for the discrete logarithm, which finds application in the field of RSA. Finally, there is a 4 steps connected with the encryption and the decryption algorithm. We have to download 3 variables. A and B are the integer variable. B is a prime number. Then choose the secret random number k. Compute R equal to a power k mod p. See, R is the value we are going to find. A is the given integer number. P is the prime number. Secret random number is k. Similarly, you find out the value of t with respect to b, value of r with respect to a. Send the pair t comma r from the sender to the receiver. So we'll be able to do the encryption value. So this process connected with the encryption. The final process is connected with the decryption. How do they find the decryption? T into r power minus x equivalent to m of mod p. So these are the 5 steps connected with the process of encryption and decryption between the sender and the receiver when they are transmitting this message from one end to other end. So any questions, any doubts or clarification regarding the today's topic? Any questions, you can put it in the chat box. Anybody else?